Hi everyone, Miss Phelan here. I hope you're having a good day so far. In this video, we are going to be talking about sedimentary rocks. Remember, there are three types of rocks: igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary. What are they made of? Sedimentary rocks are made from sediments. Recall or remember that sediments are tiny pieces of rocks, minerals, or parts of plants or animals. So a sediment is a tiny piece of rock. If you think of a piece of sand is a sediment. A piece of clay is a sediment. Maybe a piece of a shell could be considered a sediment. That's what we mean when we say parts of animals or plants, right? A shell is from a living thing. Maybe a piece of that shell is cut off and becomes a sediment on the beach, which could then become part of a sedimentary rock. How do they form? So, sedimentary rocks usually form in some kind of water, ocean, or marine environment. Okay, as you can see in the picture here, let's look at step 1. It says, eroded sediments end up in the water and begin to settle. So if you think of sand, try to think of sand near the ocean. Here there are tiny pieces of sand floating in the water, and they begin to settle or move to the bottom of the water, where they build up into layers of sand. In step 2, it says, with time, more layers pile up and presses down the lower layers. Compaction. So as more sand or sediment enters the water, you get new layers on top of old layers. And this creates some pressure, which helps to kind of smush the older sediment down even more. It compacts it. Step 3, more layers. In earth science, we call layers strata. More layers and further compaction or further pressure, further compaction forces out water of the layers. So kind of like when you're walking on the beach, when you push down with your hand or your foot, the water gets forced out of the sand, right? You're pushing down, you're adding pressure. You create this kind of imprint, and sometimes you can see the water move up around your hand. That's because you're pushing it out from the sand that is underneath the pressure you are applying. Step 4, salt crystals glue the layers together. Cementation. A rock mass is formed sedimentary. Okay, so here's what they're saying is that after years and years and years of this pressure on top of the rock, sometimes then you get some kind of glue to hold the rock together, to hold the sediments together. It could kind of like a cement, right? That's why it's called cementation. If you think of cement that we use in building, cement is tiny pieces of rock that are then held together with that kind of muddy mixture that turns into hard rock like a sidewalk. The important thing to know is that sedimentary rocks form in marine or ocean environments. What are the observable characteristics of sedimentary rocks? In other words, how do we identify them? If you were to pick up a rock, how would you be able to tell if it was sedimentary? There are 4 main characteristics that we are going to talk about in this video. The first is that they form in layers. If you look at this picture of a sedimentary rock, you can notice different layers of different types of sediment that have formed in the rock. You see flat, horizontal layers. Okay, I'm going to erase my drawing so you can look at the picture as it originally was. Okay, you can see these layers in the rock. Our second characteristic is that sedimentary rocks contain fossils. Remember that fossils are the remains of organisms, okay, from the past. So it could be anything from a dinosaur bone, that's our kind of most cliche example of a fossil. But a fossil is any kind of part of a living organism. It could even just be a footprint in the rock, that could be considered a fossil. But in the case of sedimentary rocks, we're usually talking about some kind of hard piece of the animal. So it could be a shell, it could be a bone, any kind of hard part that was part of an animal that get caught up into this mixture of sediment. Sometimes they're really easy to see, like in this rock here. You can see all of these fossils as part of the sedimentary rock. Our third characteristic is that they could be made of shells. Okay, this type of rock is called coquina, and it is made up of tiny little fragments or sediments of shells that have been cemented together. Our fourth characteristic is that they are clastic. Okay, this is a vocab word for us here. The word clastic means made up of fragments or sediments. So my definition of clastic is that it looks like tiny pieces of rock cemented together. Okay, if you look at this rock, you can see all these different individual rocks that just look like they're cemented together. This is different than the igneous rocks we looked at in our last video because you couldn't see individual rocks in there. You may have seen crystals, you may have seen different colors, but here this is distinct because it just looks like tiny pieces of rock, or sometimes not even so tiny, that have been cemented together. We name sedimentary rocks based on the size of the sediments in the rock. Okay, like I just said, in this rock on the left, some of those pieces aren't very tiny. They're pretty large pieces of rock, pretty large sediments that make up the rock. However, in other sedimentary rocks, okay, such as sandstone or siltstone, there are very, very tiny pieces of sediment that make up the rock. So we can classify our sedimentary rocks based on the size of the sediments that make up the rock. So before we finish this video, we are going to write down some notes on sedimentary rocks. To start us off, let's recall that sedimentary rocks are made of sediment or pieces of rock minerals or plants and animals. Our second important point is that sedimentary rocks form in marine environments. In sedimentary rocks, the sediments are held together. They come together through the process of cementation. Sediments are cemented together. One more important point to know is that sedimentary rocks are classified by the size of the sediment. We aren't quite done with our notes yet. Please take a minute to make sure you have these 4 points written down. Now we'll move on and write down the observable characteristics of a sedimentary rock. What can we look for in a rock to try to figure out if it is a sedimentary rock? We will look for 4 main observable characteristics. The first is that the rock has layers. The second is that the rock has fossils. The third is that the rock contains shells. And the fourth characteristic is that the rock is clastic. And remember, our definition of clastic is that the rock contains tiny pieces of sediment or rock cemented together. Please take a minute to make sure you have all 4 of these observable characteristics of sedimentary rocks written down. Okay, guys, that's all for today. I hope you have a great day. Please remember to ask for help if you need help with any of your work, and hopefully I can talk to you soon.